Hey everyone, welcome to 5.9a. I'm going to go over the first one because it's a good example of what you should do for the first three, and then I'm going to skip down to number 4. So you are still responsible for doing all of them, and if you need help, that's okay. Just ask me for help, text me. All right, so we are going to start by looking at this one. This one does not have a coefficient of a, meaning the coefficient here is 1. 1 is a perfect square. So I don't need to do anything special with this one. I'm going to start by cleaning this up and adding 51 to both sides. And that's just so that 51 is out of the way, over to the side, and I'm going to use it later. Then I'm going to take my middle term, which is 14, and divide by 2, which gives me 7. And then if it had a coefficient, we would divide by the square root of a. But here, the coefficient is 1, so the square root of 1 is 1. It's 7 divided by 1. So we're going to do 7 squared equals 49. Now I'm going to add 49 to both sides because this makes it a nice perfect square. So here what I have is a plus 7 squared equals 100. Okay, now this a plus 7 is the same as a plus 7 times a plus 7 because we have the square here. And so some people have been asking me, well, what happens to that middle term? Well, here when we multiply a times a, we get a squared. Then we multiply outside, so a times 7, we get 7a. Inside plus 7a. And last, 7 plus 7, or 7 times 7 rather, is positive 49. And so our middle term, the 14a, is when we multiply our inside and outside terms. And notice that half of 14 is 7. That's why we divide by 2 over here, is because that's how we make this a perfect square. All right, so now I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and I'm going to get a plus 7 equals positive 10, or a plus 7 equals negative 10. If I subtract 7 from both sides, I'll get a equals 3 on this side, and a equals negative 17 on this side. All right, so you're going to apply those same steps to number 2 and number 3, right? Move your constant to the other side, take your middle term and divide by 2. Make sure to be careful with this one because there's a negative middle term. So when you factor over here into your squared form, you should have a minus in the middle. But you can do that part on your own. Same thing with number 3. Number 3 does not have a minus in the middle though. So that can help you to determine what your terms need to look like right here. Let's look at number 4. Number 4 is interesting because it has a 5 as a coefficient. So there's actually 2 ways to handle this. The first way that we focused on and learned yesterday was to multiply the entire thing by 5 because that creates a perfect square for our coefficient. We have 25k squared plus 100k equals 300. Now I'm going to take the square root of 25, which equals 5. I'm going to save that for later. 100 divided by 2 gives me 50. 50 divided by 5 gives me 10. And then I have to square 10 to make it a perfect square, so that's 100. So I'm going to add 100 to both sides. 300 plus 100 is 400. And now I'm going to rewrite this as a perfect square. So that will be the square root of 25k squared is 5k, and then the square root of 100 is 10. And so now I can solve this by taking the square root of both sides, and I'll get 5k plus 10 equals plus or minus 20. All right, if you go ahead and solve that, then we can subtract 10 from both sides. So we'll get 5k equals 10, k equals 2, or 5k equals negative 30, and then k therefore equals negative 6. Let me show you another way to do this. So what's cool about 5k squared plus 20k equals 60 is that all of these numbers are divisible by 5. And if we were divide instead of multiply by 5, then we will get k squared, and then now the coefficient is 1, which is a perfect square, plus 20 divided by 5 is 4k equals 12. Now I can complete the square by taking half of 4 and squaring it, which is plus 4 on both sides, we'll get k plus 2 squared equals 16. Take the square root of both sides, and we get k plus 2 equals plus or minus 4. Notice we will still get the same answer. We'll either get 2 or negative 6. So when you have a coefficient of k that is not a perfect square, and you can either multiply it by the number or divide it if it is divisible, right? If each term is divisible by that number. So each term here, each part is divisible by 5, and that's why I was easily able to do that. Okay, let's take a look at the next example in number 5, because you'll see something kind of similar here. So in number 5, notice that on the other side of our equal sign, we have a minus 12x. It's not a constant, it's a linear term. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add 12x to both sides here. And I'm going to get 6x squared minus 36x equals 0. Okay, now I can complete the square in the way that I normally would, or notice that both 6 and 36 are divisible by 6. So I can rewrite this as x squared minus 6x equals 0. I would also divide 0 by 6 and get 0. Now I can complete the square by saying half of 6 is 3, negative 3, and negative 3 squared equals 9. So I can add 9 to both sides. This now is x minus 3 squared equals 9. And so then I can take the square root and get x minus 3 equals a plus or minus 9. Okay, that's another way that you can tackle this problem. Now, if you wanted to multiply the whole thing by 6 to make it 36 and make a perfect square that way, you certainly could, but you're going to get a lot of really big numbers. And so in this instance, dividing by 6, since these are all divisible by 6, makes it a little bit easier to handle. All right, so number 6 then, looking at number 6, notice that not all of them are divisible by 8. 16 is divisible by 8, but 42 is not divisible by 8. So you can multiply by 8 to make this 64 if you so choose. However, you can also divide this by 4, or not 4, by 2, just to make it a little bit smaller if you wanted to. We're going to go ahead and just multiply everything by 8. So we'll get 64x squared plus 16 times 8. And it's always good mental practice to actually do that multiplication. But if you need a calculator, you can use one. But 8 times 6 is 48. Carry the 4 is 12. So 128x. And then 8 times 42 is going to give us 336. So minus 336 equals 0. Now I'm going to add 336 to both sides because I want to clean that up. And I'll get 64x squared plus 128x equals 336. I need to complete the square. So I'm going to take the square root of 64 and save it for later. I'm going to do 128 divided by 2, which gives me 64. 64 divided by 8, which gives me 8. And then 8 squared, which gives me back to 64. So here I'm going to add 64 to both sides. And so now I have a perfect square here of 8x plus 8 squared equals 336 plus 64 is 400, which is a perfect square. And now I can take the square root of both sides. So you can proceed from there. The square root of 400 is 20. So here, again, the key point is that we needed to multiply to make a perfect square. And then once we do that, we take the square root of a, which is 8, divide our middle term by 2, and then divide again by the square root of a. Add that to both sides, and now we've got nice perfect square roots on both sides. All right, number 7 is a great example of one in which all of them are divisible by 2. So instead of multiplying, I'm going to divide by 2 get a squared plus 4a plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. I get a squared plus 4a equals negative 3. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared equals 4. So my magic number is 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Now I have a plus 2 squared equals 1. Take the square root of both sides. Get a plus 2 equals 1. A plus 2 equals negative 1. And again, you can you can continue to solve these one-step equations. Number 8 is not tricky at all, but they put the 8x on the other side. So let's subtract 8x from both sides. We'll get 3x squared minus 8x equals negative 4. And I'm going to leave that negative 4 there because I'm just working on completing my square. Now, in this case, the coefficient of x squared is 3, and not all these numbers are divisible by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 to make it a perfect square. Now we have 9x squared minus 24x equals negative 12. I'm going to take the square root of 9, which is 3, and I'm going to divide negative 24 divided by 2, which gives me negative 12, divided by 3, which gives me negative 4. 4 squared equals 16. That's my magic number. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Now I have perfect squares on both sides. So negative 12 plus 16 is 4. And then to make this a perfect square, we're looking at 9x squared, so that's going to be 3x plus, minus 4. And it's going to be minus because I want my middle terms to add up. It's going to be 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 and negative 12 is negative 24. Now we can take the square root of both sides. 3x minus 4 equals 2. And 3x minus 4 equals negative 2. And again, you can solve it from that point forward. Number 9 is no coefficient of n. So all you really need to do is get this negative 18n on this side. So we're going to n squared minus 18n equals 40. And go from there. Take half of 18, square it, add it to both sides, see what you get. Okay? You can do number 9 almost completely on your own. I've given you some helpful hints to start, but I expect you to be able to do that. And then the last one, notice that we have some things that aren't combined here. So let's go ahead and start by adding 4 to both sides. So we get 4x squared minus 12x equals 16. Now notice all of these are divisible by 4. So let's divide everything by 4 and get rid of that coefficient. So we have x squared minus 3x equals 4. Now this is a lot easier to complete. There is a fraction in this one though, right? So negative 3 divided by 2 is negative 3 halves, or negative 1 1/2. And then we're going to square it. Leave it as a fraction. So this equals 9/4. I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. Rewrite this as x minus 3 over 2 equals, and let's go ahead and convert this one so we have, a little bit of an easier time here. This is the same as 16 over 4 plus 9 over 4 equals 25 over 4, which is good, right? Because 25 over 4 is a perfect square. So now, I can take the square roots of both sides, and we get x minus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus 5 over 2. And as with all of these, you can solve the rest of that equation on your own. All right, your code word for today is ostracize. Ostracize, because that's a word that you should have heard in TC's class today. So ostracize, try to spell it correctly, is your code word. If you have any questions, text me. Ask me to get on Teams with you. I will help you. Happy homeworking and see you tomorrow.